So let's imagine the SHTF has happened, and you've joined a group, a group or community that's banded together for survival. And during your time with this group, a young teenage female has accused you of raping her. And now suddenly you found yourself tied up and being held as prisoner, and her father is hot-stepping your way with his rifle, and he's demanding that you be executed immediately. Today's video is going to explore how to deal with situations like this and how to keep innocent people from being executed, and how you, the prepper or the community that's trying to survive after SHTF, how you can deal with crimes that's been committed after SHTF has happened and there's no law enforcement or rule of law. Almost every day that I work, and as I'm getting dispatched on responding to crimes and crimes in progress and crimes that have happened, I am constantly and almost every day reminded just how bad crime will more than likely be after SHTF. I always have that stark reminder that most criminals try to rein in their behavior because there's immediate consequences many times for their actions. And I know that if SHTF happens and the rule of law goes by the wayside, that violence and crime will probably shoot through the roof. So when SHTF happens, there's a high likelihood that there won't be the tax base to support police officers, courts, judges, jails, etc. And many prepper groups and communities may find themselves having to deal with crime, having to take the law into their own hands without the support of police and jails and judges and courts, etc. And so each community is going to have to answer these questions for themselves. Are they going to ensure that innocent people don't get executed or punished? And are they going to ensure that they can properly investigate accusations of crimes? And they're going to have to find out, how will they handle crime after SHTF? Now, some of you may scoff at me for saying this, but the thought of communities and groups taking the law into their own hands can be a frightening thing, at least to me, especially if those people have no idea how any type of a judicial system works or anything like that. If they're letting their emotions rule and they're not taking the proper steps, I can see a lot of innocent people getting executed, or the real perpetrator not being brought to justice. In my job, I see false accusations happen all the time, and this is during regular times when we have a pretty good chance of showing that they are a false accusation. So let's revisit the example that I gave at the beginning of the video to show the importance of properly investigating and handling crimes committed after SHTF by prepper community groups or what have you. But let's say that your teenage son is fishing down by a creek, and let's say that a teen girl in that community has her eyes on him, and so she goes and sees him fishing down by the creek, and she goes down there and she makes some advances on him, and then maybe your son doesn't find her attractive, and he rebuffs her advances. Well, then she gets upset, and then she runs off, and then what she does is maybe she tears some clothing of hers, maybe puts a few scratches on herself, rolls around in the mud a little bit, and then she runs and tells her family that your son raped her. Now, of course, your son did not rape her. She just made that accusation for revenge for him rebuffing her advances. But anyways, now you've got her family, her dad and her uncles or cousins or whomever, now stomping towards your house with their guns, demanding that a bullet gets put in the back of your son's brain. So situations like this is something that your prepper group or your community or whoever is going to need to discuss to how you're going to work stuff like this out before it happens. And folks, if you think that this example that I gave may be far-fetched, folks, this example that I gave is pretty close to a couple of different investigations that I have had. And again, this is something that your group, your prepper group, your community, whoever, will need to discuss and agree upon, and maybe even develop SOPs on, again, before it even happens. Maybe you all agree that no executions will happen until the accused crime has been properly investigated. And maybe even agree that anybody that's trying to do a revenge executed will have to be stopped by whatever means necessary to stop that from happening. And that will be a hard pill for the majority of us to swallow. If a father finds out that his teenage daughter has been brutally raped, or if a parent finds out that their toddler kid has been molested, we feel for those parents that do want to go put a bullet in the back of that person's head that's been accused of doing it. But our job of being in that prepper group or that community will be to ensure that that parent is not able to carry out that revenge execution until a proper hearing or a proper trial has been held. So if your group has decided that no executions will take place before a trial, now your group has to figure out how you're going to get the evidence, how you're going to hold that person until their trial, how you will hold the trial, and then how the execution or the punishment will be carried out. So you'll first have to figure out was how will you find and seize any evidence? Will you abide by the United States Constitution, or abide by the Constitution or the laws that's in the country that you live in if you live outside of the United States? Now I have to warn you, if you just simply say, oh, we're just going to follow the U.S. Constitution in this situation, then I really just got to let you know then that if that is your plan, then you're really going to need somebody that's in your group that is an attorney or a seasoned police officer or somebody like that that really understands the Constitution and understands the steps that we have so we don't violate the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. Or you really need to start studying up on case law and the Constitution yourself. For instance, if somebody is accused of theft and the accuser says that the thief has the stolen goods inside of his house, how will you go about going into that suspected thief's house to recover those stolen goods and to collect that evidence? Are you just going to barge into that person's house and look for the stolen goods? Or will you follow the Constitution and try not to violate that guy's Fourth Amendment rights? Will you try to make sure that you have articulable facts of why you think this guy has stolen items inside of his house? And who will you articulate these facts to? And who within your group is going to listen to your facts to make sure you're upholding the Fourth Amendment? Is your group or your community going to have one head person in charge, or are you going to have like 4 or 5 basically elders or elected people to make sure everything's standing in line? And if somebody is actually caught stealing or committing rape or some other crime like that, how are you going to hold these people until you do hold a trial or a hearing? Hopefully you have some kind of a spare detention area, maybe a fenced-in area, or maybe a spare cabin or something. But where will you hold these people until this hearing happens? And how long will your group be able to hold somebody until they are actually given a trial? Are you going to stand true to the Constitution and only have so many days to officially charge them, or so many weeks or so many months to hold that trial before you are forced to release them? And what burden of proof will your group require for you to meet, for the group to meet, before you convict somebody of a crime? And let's talk about the burden of proof real fast. In today's normal times, it takes probable cause to arrest somebody, and then it takes beyond a reasonable doubt to convict them in court. And I like to think about it this way. Probable cause is 75% proof that somebody committed a crime, and reasonable doubt is like 80 or 85% proof that somebody committed a crime. Think of it this way. Let's say a judge and a jury are already seated inside of a courtroom. And let's say there's a person standing there, and then the murder suspect comes in and actually shoots that victim in front of the judge and the jury. Now that court has 100% proof that that guy committed that murder because they witnessed it. But of course that's not how it works in real life. These murders always happen in a dark alley someplace or something like that. So then, if you've got one person, which is usually the state, saying, hey, this guy committed this murder, and then you got the murderer saying, hey, I didn't commit the murder, right there with word against word, you've basically got 50-50 if the guy's guilty of the crime or not. So what you need to do to convict a honestly guilty person is you got to get that from 50% up to 80-85% proof to get him convicted of this crime. So while you're at 50-50, you're saying he did it, him saying I didn't do it. If you can place him in the area at the time that the crime was committed, now you've gone up to maybe, instead of 50%, maybe to 60%. And then if you can find the murder weapon in his bedroom, now you've reached that threshold of 80%, 85% to actually convict him. And then once you do that, then your group can go about deciding what his fate is going to be. Now, if you're a subscriber, stay tuned, because we're getting ready to delve into many more points about this really critical topic. Now let's revisit the example that I used earlier, where the teenage girl tore some of her clothing, put some scratches on herself, put some mud on her, and then ran and told her parents that your teenage son raped her. I'll have to admit, somebody that shows up and they're disheveled and they got scratches on them and they're acting really upset and emotional, that's pretty convincing that they really were raped and that they're giving a true accusation. I mean, if it wasn't convincing, the people wouldn't do it to begin with. So after SHTF, and we don't have video footage, video surveillance, we don't have DNA and other investigative tools like that, how do we ensure that somebody is not making false accusations, and how do we ensure that we properly investigate crimes? First, by paying attention to detail. In the example that I used, if your community has a doctor, then he can do a pelvic exam on the female. He can look for trauma or signs of forced penetration, etc. And you can also examine the clothes of both the accuser and the accused. Is there dried semen on her clothes? And if the boy is fishing by the creek, he's probably going to have some mud on him too, but is his knees extra muddy that would be consistent with a forcible rape or something to that effect? And the doctor could also examine the accused boy also. Does he have any defensive wounds on him? And if he did commit that rape down by the creek bank, he would probably have grass, dirt, and other debris underneath his clothing, underneath his underwear. And the vaginal smell of that girl may still be present on the boy down in his pubic area. And of course, you would still have to weigh the statements of both the accused and the accuser. People that are telling the truth have a tendency to have pretty good details in their stories, whereas many times, not all the time, but many times, people that are not telling the truth will try to keep their stories vague. The more vague their stories are, the less they have to remember. Like typically a person that's making a false accusation about a rape will just say something very, very, very vague, like, we were just sitting there and fishing and talking when all of a sudden he came on to me. I tried pushing him off, but then he just raped me. Now again, it's not true in every case that a false accuser will keep their statements vague, but this is just, again, just something to think about for you guys to consider for this topic. And then we also have a lot of parents that coach their children into making false accusations. I ran into this numerous times in my investigation. Believe it or not, parents will use their children as pawns when they have disagreements with an ex or neighbors or whatever. And it is hard to disbelieve when a 5-year-old is telling you that somebody stuck their pee-pee up his bottom. But that's where many parents will mess up, that are coaching their children will mess up. They will tell their child, their 5-year-old or 6-year-old, to tell the police that, Mr. So-and-so or whomever stuck his pee-pee up his bottom. Many young children, very young children like that, when they are being molested, they don't actually always see what's happening during the molestation. So usually what they will describe to you is what they feel and not what they see. So many times they won't actually see this guy sticking his pee-pee up his bottom. What the child will describe is what he feels. So a child will many times will say during this that the guy then stuck a knife up his bottom, because what that child is describing is the pain that he felt. And that kid might actually even think that a knife or something like that was being stuck up his bottom. And then kids also too, they don't understand body functions yet with the sexual nature, for lack of better terms. So if you have a child that says something along the lines of that when the guy was done, then he peed his white pee on him, then there's a very high likelihood that that kid is actually telling the truth. And so just another tip there for you guys to consider, to think about again on this subject. And like I said in one of my other previous videos, if the kid says that the molester put some oily, greasy stuff on his bottom that the guy got from a orange-colored bottle, then going and finding that orange bottle of lube in the accused person's bedroom will definitely take it from the accused saying that this happened and the accuser saying it didn't happen. It'll definitely take it from that 50-50 to the 80% chance for a conviction, especially if the suspect would have no reason to have that child in his bedroom. And can that child describe anything about the accused person, you know, especially any details that would be underneath the accused person's clothes, like did he have any moles or scars in certain areas that would normally be covered up by underwear or pants or what have you. So if an accusation gets made of that, then that's where you would want to get a quote-unquote search warrant through whoever's in charge of your group to inspect that accused person to see if they do have that mole as that child describes. I can think of one case, it wasn't my case, but a case that another detective had, where the young child said that the guy didn't have any hair down there, no hair in his pubic area down there. And when the police got a search warrant to view that guy down there, they did find that that guy was shaved. So just another tip. And especially if that kid is not supposed to be in that person's room or their house to begin with, and would have no reason to be in there, can that kid describe anything about the inside of that molester's or the accused molester's bedroom? Can the kid talk about, or can the kid describe what the bed looked like or any furniture in there? Anything that would show that that kid was actually in that area, especially if the kid shouldn't be in that area to begin with. So where there's crimes where there's only two people involved, the accuser and the accused, I don't know of any 100% way to 100% make certain that the accused is truly guilty of that crime. And that's what this video is all about, is to give tips for you and your group to think about and to make plans for how to ensure that innocent people don't get executed or punished, and that actual criminals, actual guilty people, do get justice. And I gave just a handful of examples in this video. This is the type of video that if I came up with every example that I could think of, this video could go on for hours and hours and hours. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think I missed any important points in this video? Do you want to be part of a prepping group or community that wouldn't try to give fair hearings or fair trials, that would just drag the accused out and put a bullet in the back of their head? And if a teenage girl did come running up and she was disheveled and had some scrapes on her, and she said that she had been raped, would you allow an immediate execution to take place? Or would you want to see if more evidence could be found before holding a trial or doing an execution? And would you and your group actually do executions for very violent crimes like forcible rape, child molestations, etc.? And if your group would do executions, how would you do the executions? Would you do firing squad? Would you do hanging? And who would take part of the executions that your group carries out? Would everybody be involved in a firing squad? Or would you be the person that actually does it? Or would you let the victim or the victim's family actually carry out the executions? So let's say, give an example, a man gets convicted of molesting a young child. Would you let the father of that child carry out the execution? Folks, what I'm not doing here is giving you concrete answers of what to do for situations like this during SHTF. There's too many variables to always get to be able to give you absolute concrete answers. What I'm doing here is giving you something to think about, something to plan, a baseline that you can use as examples of how you would move forward with investigating crimes after SHTF. And if you want to learn one way that your team can take somebody into custody, a video should be appearing in the upper right hand corner just about now, showing how you and your team can practice this. And one last thing, folks, in this video I'm not trying to do anything more than just give you points on how you and your prepper team or your community can possibly handle crime and punishment after SHTF. I'm not trying to say that females make more false accusations. I'm not trying to say that males are always the rapists or the molesters or anything like that. I'm just trying to give points here. Anyways, folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.